Louisville at Clemson. It's an ACC showdown. Clemson, of course, undefeated, minus that week one loss at a neutral site against the Georgia Bulldogs. Ever since, Clemson has been able to take care of business against App State, NC State, Stanford, FSU, Wake, Virginia, and now matching up with Louisville. They're in Death Valley. Clemson is a 10.5 point favorite. The over under set at a really high 63 points. Whoa, that's a lot of points. This is a big game for Clemson, Mason, because as we look at the rest of their schedule, this very well may be the last speed bump in the road for Clemson as there looks like they're marching towards an ACC championship bid. But hold the phone. There's multiple teams in the ACC right now undefeated. We were just talking about it on another video that we were doing here on the First and Long College Football Show. SMU, Louisville, SMU, Clemson, Miami, they're all undefeated in the ACC at this point. There's no margin for error for any of these three teams. And with that being said, this is a really, really, really big matchup. Let's kind of look at Louisville, who's coming into town to play there in Death Valley. There's been some ups and there's been some downs for this Louisville team this season, Mason. And it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, Louisville fans, but seems to be in the first quarter are most of the downs for this team, right? If you took away some of the first quarter woes from this team over this season, and specifically like the Notre Dame game where you turned the ball over 3 times in the first quarter, this team is probably a lot better off record wise. But that's not the case, and that's not how football works. So with that being said, this team's been a little bit inconsistent. Like I said, there's been some high moments. Louisville very well had the opportunity to beat Miami earlier this season, right? Hung right there in that football game. About 100 points scored in that football game, right? So we've seen the offense be versatile, and we've seen them be able to score a lot of points whenever they need to hang in a football game. The defense, I think, has been a little bit of a disappointment at times for Louisville this season. What do you think about the Cards heading into this matchup? We're going to talk about the Clemson defense here in a minute, but we are talking matchups here. Clemson's gave up some points this year, Mason, and you saw the total in this football game at 63. Vegas has got this thing as a shootout, man, and a really entertaining football game. So, what does Louisville need to do in this football game to secure a victory? This is a lot better Clemson offense than what we've seen over the last few seasons as well. So you kind of a trade-off there. What does the Cards need to do? What does Tyler Shook need to do to be able to get the dub here?
Well, I think they're going to have to continue to pass the football like they've done all year. They've been pretty good at passing, 10th in the country in passing yards per game. I'm concerned about their ability to run the football in this game. They haven't done a good job of it all year long. They're 68th in the country in rushing yards. Their attempts are 112th in the country, just 30 and a half attempts per game. And in this football game, you're going up against Clemson, which I get hasn't been the most elite defense that we've seen in years past from Clemson. This season it seems like they're giving up more through the air, so it kind of plays to the favor. It really plays to the over, which is why the line is set so high. Louisville does a great job at passing the football. Like I said, can they continue that against this Clemson pass rush? I mean, is Clemson going to be able to get home in this one? I think that is a big question for me, and really, I'm curious to see what Louisville does starting out in this football game. Clemson is third in the country in on defense in giving up points in the first quarter. They're averaging just 1.4 points in that first quarter, and then it kind of gets worse as the game goes on. By the fourth quarter, they're 124th. in the country, giving up almost 10 points in that last quarter there. So how does Louisville start? Right? How do they start in this first quarter? I think that could dictate how the game goes. And then, too, I mean, obviously protecting the football. Clemson's done a good job with takeaways. They're 20th in the country in interceptions, 14th in the country in fumbles, and 36th in the country in sacks. So how does Clemson's pass rush affect this offensive line for Louisville? They're kind of middle of the pack there in giving up sacks at 55th in the country. To me, though, it's going to come down to the passing attack. I mean, like I said, Tyler Shook has played really well, and I think that this Louisville team as a whole is being discounted because of the loss to Notre Dame, because of the loss to Miami, the loss to SMU. All games were decided by one score, right? All games were games that they were in until the fourth quarter, and they were back and forth games and really fun ones to watch as well. Can they win a one score game for once? I mean, that's kind of my question here. I think that people are kind of sleeping on this Louisville team. Like I said, because of the 3 losses, they just see the 3 losses in the win column and think that this is a team that's not going to be able to get it done. But from a personnel standpoint, I do still believe that this is a pretty good team, and they've shown in those games that even when they're down by 14 points or something like that, they can come back. Tyler Shook is a baller, and he can bring you back from a large deficit. What do we see in this football game from him, and can he show that baller's mentality to go out there and bring the team back if they fall behind? Again, first quarter is huge here. I think that if Louisville wins this game, they need to win it in the first quarter against a tough defense for Clemson, at least in the first quarter. Can they go out and get up by 3 or 7 points in that first quarter? That's kind of the question to me.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think we need to mention too, Colin Lacey is not playing for Louisville anymore, at least for right now. He decided he was going to quit this season. You make of that whatever you will. Everybody's got an opinion on that. But fact of the matter is, he's decided to hang it up for the season, and has his agent has told Louisville that there's a possibility he could come back to Louisville next season. Who knows? Ja'Cory Brooks obviously is the number one guy from this point forward on as far as wide receivers go on this offense, and he certainly is a deep down the field threat. This team's been extremely explosive, 7th in the country of pass plays of 20 plus yards. That's what's grown this season. Is the offense has grown from early in the season to now. I think they know their identity a little bit more than they did to start the season. You got some really good running backs in this room. I feel like the running back room is underrated at Louisville a little bit, and it's a lot of young guys, so they've made some crucial mistakes, man. But I think Louisville is set in the running back room. Just kind of a side note, set in that running back room for years to come. You got several young guys that have done really well. And they've been efficient running the football, 27th in the country, 5.16 yards per carry. So whereas they haven't ran it up with the yards, they have been efficient. Let's talk defensively. This defensively was supposed to be what was a little more known about this football team coming in from the preseason. You had a much higher percentage of returning production defensively from last season, but I think if you're looking at it objectively, I don't know that it was a great defense last year. It wasn't great. It had some good moments, no doubt, but it's left a little bit to be desired for me defensively. Now, I like what you said a minute ago about who this team has lost to. Think about who this team has lost to this season and what all those teams have in common. They're all college football playoff contenders, every single one of them. So this isn't a Louisville team that has lost and got the score ran up on them by, Helen Keller School for the Blind and Deaf or something. I mean, when they've lost games, it's been to formidable opponents, and that's really not even arguable at this point. But the numbers are what they are defensively. Not great, just not really great. Haven't caused a lot of turnovers. Haven't been able to get a ton of sacks. I would say been okay at getting after the quarterback as far as sacks. Been decent as getting behind the line of scrimmage, tackles for loss. I got 51 of them this season. That's 33rd in the country. So been a little bit disruptive in the backfield, and I just thought that maybe this team would be a little bit better against the rush. And if you wanna look at a strength of the defense, I guess it is technically against the rush, but um, against the pass is where they've really struggled. It's pass yards per game allowed 222.8, and some of that's skewed by some of the teams that they've played. Don't get me wrong, but you can see it there in yards per attempt allowed. That number doesn't lie. 7.4. That's 82nd in the country. That's not good. Um, Not bad on third down. You can kind of attribute that to being able to somewhat stop the run on first and second down. They're gonna have to be able to shut something down in this game, Mason. They've got to figure out a way to limit that rushing attack by Clemson, and it's a lot easier said than done. But I think this team has got to focus on the run and try to just keep things in front of them defensively on the back end. Something they haven't been particularly good at, although okay against, they haven't given up like big plays, but offenses have moved the ball through the air. What do you think about Louisville defensively going into this matchup? And we'll kind of transition over into Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. This is a underperforming defense for Louisville. Going into this season, we thought that they would be much better. They just gave up 27 points after or against Boston College this past week. Boston College has been a pretty good offense. I'll give you that, but also 20 points they gave up against Virginia. Of course, the 52 that they gave up against Miami. Miami's a tough team to stop defensively, regardless of who you are. I think that's a team
Yeah.
that's going to get that they're going to get their points. But really, defensively, this team's got to play better. Similar to the offensive side of the football, this team's got to play better in the first half defensively. In the first quarter, they're giving up 8.2 points defensively, and then in the second, they're giving up 7.6. That's 122nd and 68th in the country. Now, in the third and fourth quarter, they do get a little bit better. They're 33rd and 31st in the country, averaging just 8.7 points total in the second half. But again, I'm going to point to the strong start here for Louisville is so important on both sides of the football. They've got to limit the scoring in the first half here because Clemson, I mentioned the defense and how good they've been in the first half. They're equally, if not better, on offense in the first half. They're first in the country in the first quarter scoring, fifth in the country in the second quarter scoring. They're averaging 26.6 points in the first half. So how does this defense come out? They've shown an ability to make adjustments. It seems like throughout the game, but are they going to be prepared going into this one to limit the explosive plays in that first half, give their offense a chance to go out and take a lead there in the second half?
Absolutely. Let's jump over into Clemson, and we'll start on the offensive side of the ball because that's what came up first here. But this is a much improved unit, in my opinion. There was a lot of flack sent the offensive coordinator's way. What's his name? The
Garrett Riley.
Garrett Riley. Um, he got a lot of flack last year, man, and some of it probably deserved, but I don't think he was dealt the best hand necessarily. Well, now he's starting to make wine out of water. This offense has looked a ton better, and a lot of it has to do with Cade Klubnik. Cade Klubnik has looked hands down so much better this season than what he looked like last season, and has been a perfect example of a quarterback that can grow. Sometimes you see quarterbacks come in and they do one thing their freshman year, and it's like, hey, that was a pretty good freshman year. And then the next year they do exact same thing. And then junior year they do the exact same thing, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. Cade Klubnik showed improvement. 66.7%, 1,836 yards, 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So those are good numbers, no doubt. And you can look at the numbers for this offense, and not a ton to pick on, really. That look outside of the Georgia game, this offense has done their dang thing. And to be honest with you, a lot of the stats from the Georgia game are holding these stats back. A lot of these stats would be even better, right? And a lot of the national rankings would be a whole lot better. So just like in college football playoff rankings or ratings or whatever you want to call it, we're not going to sit there and hold that against them. Georgia's one of the best defenses in the country. There's no arguing that now. So um, I'm really impressed with this group. People stepping up at the wide receiver position has been a big difference for this team. Now, is it where it needs to be? Is the wide receiver group where it needs to be? For Clemson to win national championships, or what we've seen them do in the mid 20 teens. I don't know if we're there yet, but this is a good step in the right direction. The offense has been explosive through the passing game this season. That has not been the case. Passing yards per game, 290.6. That has not nearly been the case. So you got to tip your cap when things are improving and looking good. And I have to tip my cap to Clemson on this one. The offense has looked a whole lot better this season. And beyond that, they've protected the quarterback. I really noticed this going through the numbers, and I gotta give my kudos. Matt Luke is a great offensive line coach, man. And he just proves that year in, year out. Everywhere he goes, he's back out of retirement or his hiatus or whatever. And look at the numbers: 20th in the country at tackles for loss allowed, only 30 this season, and 7th in the country with only 6 sacks allowed. A really good offensive line coach can make the world of difference, and it's really been the case at Clemson with Matt Luke showing up and helping out with that group. What do you think about the offense this season, Mason?
Yeah, well, I mentioned how good they've been in the first half. I think this offense's identity has really changed here as of late. I mean, we thought that this would be a run first offense with Phil Baffa, toting the rock, and they've been good in the run game. I'm not saying they've been bad. They're 25th in the country, averaging just under 200 yards per game, but they're not. They're 89th in the country in rush attempts per game at 34.1. So this is a team that has really passed the ball more than they've run it, just a touch more than they've run it, averaging 35.4 pass attempts in the country. That's 26th in the country, or pass attempts per game, which is 26th in the country. So really different looking offense than what we've seen from Clemson, or what we saw from them last year under Garrett Riley, which I've noted in the past. But Garrett Riley, comes in from TCU, a team that was playing in the national championship game. So he really missed a lot of the postseason practices and getting with the team during like the bowl week and things like that. And then Clemson had a lot of wide receivers out last year as well through spring practice. So it just seemed like the offense wasn't really on the same page. Now it's looking like they are very much so on the same page, and have the receivers now to really push the ball down the field. Really like what Wesco has brought to this team as a true freshman, and Klubnik is just playing much better. This is an offense that does not turn the ball over. They don't give up sacks, and they don't turn the ball over. That makes for a very deadly offense. And on top of that, they're passing the ball very well. This is a complete turnaround for this offense, and Clemson fans got to be really happy with what they've seen and the progression that they've seen year over year for this team, and also game over game. It feels like they're still playing their best football, and it doesn't seem like they peaked too early or anything like that. They've sustained since that Georgia game. They've sustained really excellent offensive performances throughout the year.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the turnovers last year, because I think you're exactly right. That was a huge problem last year, and there's really no telling what this offense would have done last year There's literally no telling what this offense would have done last year if they didn't turn the ball over so much. I mean, that was just a huge issue, and the defense bailed them out over and over. The defense got tons of turnovers last year, and lo and behold, they're good at doing it again. Right, 36 in the country with 13 total turnovers this season. This defense, look, the starting defense has been good for Clemson. The starting group has been good. You see Wade whoop ass wood as there at the right side of your screen. Um, Look, I mean, you hear coaches talk about guys in the preseason, and Woodaz is a guy who's been around a little bit, but he's never had a year like he's having right now. There's no doubt about that. And coach was talking about him in the preseason and said, this is a guy to really look out for. And that's the time of year you can listen to coaches and who they're talking about, and usually correlates to some success in the season. And that's been the case for Wade Woodaz. Been really, really good at the linebacker position this season, but it's the second, not the secondary, but the second string, I guess you could say, the second group on that depth chart that's been concerning to me, Mason. And obviously these numbers somewhat reflect those guys just as much as they reflect, the first string guys. All the numbers are mixed up here, but I've really noticed this season, anytime that Clemson has gotten, a margin that they felt comfortable enough to throw in some depth pieces into the defense, they've given up some big plays and they've given up some big points. And it didn't necessarily have to be to good offenses to do that. And you can even point to the second half of the Georgia game where Clemson goes into halftime. Georgia's had Georgia even scored in the first half, 3 points or what was it? It was something. It was
Yeah, I
hadn't
think it's
given
like
up a
six
ton.
to three.
Yeah. So, and then all of a sudden, Georgia comes out in the second half and scores over 30 points in the second half, right? So I think that's kind of the biggest concern for this group right now is depth, I guess, and um, getting some of those young guys acclimated. And it's easier said than done. Getting those guys playing time and getting them in there. It's easier said than done. Some of these guys, they're not all created equal coming out of high school, right? Sammy Brown looked amazing in the spring game, and then you know eh, I haven't really seen him do a whole heck of a lot the rest of the season that was super impressive. So, um, you never know when some of these young guys are going to emerge. There's no better place than here, no better time than now for Clemson's defensive second string pieces to step up and provide some depth. You're going to need it. There's going to be a lot of running in this football game. You're going to need guys to be able to rotate in and out. And not to mention, we're in the 10th week of the season. So depth is key. And not to mention, we're going to talk about it here at the end of the video and what Clemson's got left on their schedule. But this is a team that is eyeing a trip to Charlotte in an ACC championship game. So that depth is going to be just uber important as we get closer and closer to the first weekend of December for conference championship week. What do you think about the defense, Mason? What's your thoughts this season? They've been really good in some aspects, not so good in some others. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at the total, points given up, or just the total stats for the defense in general, a lot of these numbers are skewed by, um, blowout wins where the second string came in and gave up a ton of points in the fourth quarter in particular. And mainly I'm talking about Virginia, where um, Clemson's up big. They've only given up 10 points to Virginia. And then in the third quarter, or in the fourth quarter, they give up 21 points, and it made it kind of look like a little bit closer of a ball game than it really was. But had a similar outing against NC State, where they're up big and they give up, I think it was another 21 points in the fourth quarter. App State scored 20 on them, but that game was well put away when they started doing their scoring. So really outside of the Georgia game, I mean, they've had really good defensive showings up until the fourth quarter. When the game was put away, I mean, they only gave up 14 points to Wake Forest. Those points were scored in the first half. So they held strong in the second half there. Only gave up 13 to FSU, 14 to Stanford. So to me, I feel like the starting defense is much better than if you were to look at the overall stats for the defense for Clemson. Which I don't know that in this football game you're really going to be going to the second string. So I don't think that is much of a factor in this one. This is still a really good Clemson defense, and I have a feeling that they are going to show up and show out in this football game and kind of pin their ears back and go after these Cardinals. Here this week, going up against that offensive line, I think is a real opportunity for this defense to step up and kind of plant the flag as the premier defense in the ACC, which has shown week in and week out that there's not a great defense in this conference. Maybe Clemson kind of plants the flag and says, "Hey, we still know how to play defense over here in Clemson, South Carolina."
Yeah, and you had mentioned it, and we kind of talked about it earlier. This team needs to continue with their getting turnovers, and they're going to have opportunities to do so in that secondary, and that's where the majority of their turnovers have came from through interceptions in that secondary. So they're going to get opportunities to do it this week because Louisville is going to be throwing the football. So there's going to be opportunities for that, and this defense capitalizing on those opportunities, or Louisville being able to protect the football, I think is going to have some kind of part in the outcome of this football game. Um, what's your predictions here, man? Because it really feels like Louisville has got a chance to hold this one within 10.5. Now, home field advantage for Clemson here. You know what I'm saying? That's worth something, no doubt about it. But Louisville is a team that is battle tested, man. Like they've been through the ringer already this season. They know what they're about, and I don't think that there's any quit in this Louisville team at this point. They're not so far out of everything to where they're going to be out there quitting or anything. And almost kind of like wounded animal mode for Louisville in this situation. Um, and I guess kind of in the same sense that it's the same way for Clemson, because if you lose this one, that's two losses this season, right? Now both of them to formidable opponents. And we wanted to kind of mention Clemson's schedule here and what they've got left. Um, you got Louisville obviously this weekend. You're hosting Louisville, and then got to go to Virginia Tech next week, to Pitt, Citadel at home, and then South Carolina at home. Still got a couple of little speed bumps on that. And Virginia Tech is not a terrible team, right? So there's still some meat left on the schedule. South Carolina, a good defensive team. And you never know what can happen in a rivalry game, right? I guess. Although Clemson's pretty much dominated that series. It seems like Louisville can keep it within 10.5 on this one. As I said, I'm not ready to say that I think Louisville's going to win this football game. I think Clemson defensively is going to have to obviously get some stops, but I think steal the football away from Louisville once or twice in this game, because this is a formidable passing attack for Louisville. Just like Vegas, I expect there to be some scoring in this football game. Again, I'm not ready to sit there and say over 63 in this game. That's a high number. Join us for our betting show, which will be tomorrow. And I may have a play on this total, but I can almost guarantee it won't be over. Give me Louisville to cover the spread here, but I think Clemson wins this football game. Too much on the line for the Tigers. I think the offense is going to have a nice day for Clemson in this one. I feel like they've been working towards this game all season. I've seen more excitement and better energy from Clemson this season. I think this is an opportunity to kind of show everybody that Clemson very well could possibly be a playoff team, and they certainly are a contender in the ACC at this point. What's your prediction?
Yeah, well, make no doubt about it. Clemson is not just trying to be a playoff team. They're trying to get back to national prominence and say, "Hey, we're a team that is a national championship contender." And I think that they further that narrative this week against Louisville. I feel like the perspective, the outlook for from the national media and from Vegas on Clemson is, and on their defense is kind of what I just mentioned. A lot of fourth quarter scores given up with the backups in and things like that. I don't see Clemson having any sort of let up in this football game. I don't think that this is one where they want to sort of play around or anything like that. I think Clemson is going to come out and score early. And I think that their defense is going to take every opportunity that Louisville thinks that they have in this football game and just put the fire out immediately. And it can be very demoralizing on a team. Louisville has benefited from sticking around in a lot of these games in weeks past against some bigger opponents, but outside of Notre Dame, I don't think that Louisville has faced a defense quite like Clemson's, and Clemson's got the offense to really kind of help their defense out and keep their defense off the field in a way that Notre Dame just kind of does not. So to me, I do have Clemson covering the spread here. I think that they can win by about 17 this week. I've got the total at about 34-17, so that the under would hit in this instance. But I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a little bit higher scoring. Wouldn't be surprised if Clemson's able to put up more than 40 in this football game. So I'd probably stay away from that total. But I think that Clemson really just kind of shows up and shows out, has a complete game this week at home, going up against Louisville, which is a serviceable team, no doubt. But Clemson probably has a chip on their shoulder, thinking, we haven't been to the playoffs in a while. We think we've got one of the best offensive coordinators in the game. Couple that with a Heisman contending quarterback, and an offense that is really running on all cylinders. Give me Clemson to win and cover in this game against Louisville, and kind of put an end to Louisville's season at the end of the day.